opened her cell phone again and saw the results of her card spending today. Angfa looked at Faye and smiled slightly. Yoko saw Faye and displayed a sweet smile. Yes, after all, yes had been removed. Yoko, Angfa and Faye entered. The servants are still busy arranging Yoko's things. Yoko went up and found her room so messy. She took one item and went back down. Leia approached Faye. I bought it for you. Yoko gave the item she was carrying. Faye looked at Yoko and took it from Yoko's hand. Angfa glanced at Yoko. For me, where? Yoko smiled at Angfa. I bought the food we ate earlier. Angfa looked at Yoko in surprise. Faye smiled a little at Yoko's answer. But it counts differently. Yoko sat next to Angfa. Faye looked at both of them. Angfa slightly kept her distance because Yoko was so close to you. Faye got up from sitting and headed for the stairs carrying the goods that Yoko gave her. Angfa looked at Yoko. Tonight we may not be home. Remember, don't forget to wash the door when you sleep. Yoko nodded her head. Yes. Faye opened the item that Yoko gave her. Yes, took it out. Yoko bought the latest bag for Faye without expression. Faye put the bag in the closet. After that, yes, he opened his cell phone and found a notification from Tom. After reading yes, Faye came out of the room and went downstairs. Angfa, who saw Faye coming down the stairs while running, also stood up. Faye staring at Angfa without expression. Angfa stood without saying anything. Both of them ran out of the house. Yoko looked at Angfa and Faye, who came out. Both of them headed for the car and left the house. Several servants began to come out of Yoko's room and went downstairs. After finishing cleaning up Yoko's shopping, Angin and Faye's destination was the bar where the clock struck 7 at night. Angfa gave them the car and they both got out and entered the bar. The smell of alcohol and loud music made Faye feel a little dizzy. Angfa and Faye sat on a chair. Who are we meeting? Charlotte. Angfa, who heard Charlotte's name, immediately tidied up her appearance, and soon Charlotte approached their table. Want something to drink? No, quickly say. For this week I need a ton. Angfa looked at Faye because she knew that this item was still being processed. Okay, I'll give it to you in 5 days. Charlotte nodded her head and got up from her seat, but Angfa's hand stopped her. Yes. Faye just stared at both of them. I need your cell phone number. Charlotte took out her cell phone and let Faye write down the number, after which Faye got up and left. Faye looked at Faye, smiling stupidly. Faye just coldly looked at Faye. I got you. Angfa spoke while pulling down her eyebrows, but Faye just looked at her flatly. We don't have time. Faye immediately got up and left the bar. The two of them headed for the parking lot. Angfa drove the car away from the parking lot of the bar. The destination of the two of them was the warehouse. Drug manufacturing warehouse. Are you sure? We will give you 5 days. Angfa gave Faye a second glance and arrived at a building that would process drugs and Tanama drugs. Angfa turned off the car and got out. Faye and Angfa were invited in by the men. Faye began to observe the people who were processing the manufacture of drugs. With a mask on her lips, Faye went around the warehouse to see the manufacturing process until it was completed. Angfa glanced at the clock, which was already 10 o'clock at night. Faye approached Angfa and the two yes came out of the drug manufacturing room. After that, the two yes were escorted by the one child to see the marijuana plant. Faye looked at the plant in front of her and turned to look at Angfa. We need 1 ton within 5 days. Angfa told the owner of the marijuana plant warehouse. Of course you can. Okay. Angfa and Faye left. The two yeses walked to the parking lot and entered the car. I think we need a drink. Angfa looked at Faye. Okay. Angfa drove the car and left the warehouse. Yoko looked at the results of her shopping today. She saw cosmetic bags and other packages that were neatly arranged. A knock on the door made Yoko look at the door. She walked over and opened the door. Two waiters stood at the door and sat respectfully. The two servants looked at Yoko. Mr. Faye said to be ready as he will pick up Yonya in 1 hour. Okay. The two servants left Yoko's presence. Yoko went back inside to look at the message on her cell phone. We'll pick you up. After reading the short message from the Angfa, Yoko glanced at the clock, which was already 10 o'clock quickly. Yoko got ready and waited to be picked up. Yoko looked at her appearance in the mirror and smiled at the knock on the door. Heard again quickly, Yoko took her bag and cell phone out of the room. It opened the door and it was Faye at the door. Faye looked at Yoko's appearance and then just left. Yoko followed Faye from the second door down together to the first floor. Angfa glanced at Yoko and smiled. Faye looked at Angfa. Angfa glanced at Faye and faded a smile as Yoko approached Angfa. Where are we going? Double quotes barred at Yoko. Faye and Angfa entered the bar. Angfa looked at Yoko, who did not show any expression of nervousness or surprise. The three went to a room and entered. Yoko sat herself on the sofa as well as Faye and Angfa. Not long after, a woman brought some drinks and put a yes on the table. The woman came back out. I want to sway you to here. Angfa died. Yoko and Faye were alone in the room. Faye took the drink and began to sip it. Yoko took the blue drink and sipped it slowly. Faye watched Yoko. Yoko dropped the glass and looked at Faye. Why bring me here? Faye took another sip of her drink and then looked at Yoko. Yes, Karen, I know you've never been to Sepri's place. Yoko was silent. She entered the crowd and looked around like she was looking for someone. Hey, Angfa turned around and looked at Charlotte behind you. Angfa smiled as the sheet. Lai approached, pulling Charlotte away from the crowd. Are you looking for someone? Charlotte questioned Angfa. Satin. I accidentally saw you, so I looked for you. Are you still here? Angfa answered Charlotte. Charlotte smiled softly at Angfa. Yes, I'm not home yet. Okay, then join us. Oh, are you with someone? Yes, I'm with someone. Angfa pulled Charlotte into the room where Faye and Yoko were sitting. As the two entered, Faye and Yoko looked at Angfa and Charlotte. Can she join us? Sure, Faye answered. Yoko looked at Angfa and Charlotte, who took a seat on the empty sofa. Charlotte looked at Yoko and held out her hand. Charlotte held out her hand to Yoko. Yoko returned Charlotte's hand. Yoko, Faye and Angfa both stared at you. Charlotte removed her hand and sat next to Angfa. The four of them started drinking. Not long after, some women came in. You ordered? Faye asked Angfa because she didn't order the comfort women. Angfa raised her eyebrows. Yes. The woman began to sit on the edge of the sofa next to Faye, putting her hands on Faye's shoulders and bringing her chest closer so that Faye could see her. Yoko watched as the woman began to touch Faye's chest. Faye let the woman touch her. Yoko glanced at the two women who were detailing Engen and would sit with her on the sofa. Yoko was so uncomfortable. How could not Angfa and Faye let the woman touch them, while Charlotte preferred to drink and did not care that the woman started touching her? The other woman began to sit next to Yoko. Yoko leaned her body on the sofa and crossed her legs. Yoko, who was wearing a short black skirt, made a very sexy aya in the cage. Faye, who saw Yoko's smooth thighs, swallowed hard, quickly picked up the drink on the table and took a sip. The woman beside Yoko began to touch Yoko's shoulders, and Yoko also allowed it, wanting to see the reaction of Faye and Angfa. You're so beautiful. the woman whispered in Yoko's ear. Yoko drank the drink that had been held by Ya. Yoko glanced at the woman and gave the rest of the drink in the glass. Yes, Faye and Angfa glanced at each other, seeing Yoko's behavior. The woman grabbed the glass from Yoko's hand and took one sip. Yoko smiled. The woman set the glass on the table and looked at Yoko. The woman raised her hand and began to touch Yoko's cheek and was about to prepare to kiss Yoko, but Angfa stopped her. We're done. The four women glanced at each other and got up from the sofa. Faye exhaled, seeing the woman who was flirting with Yoko had moved away from Yoko's side. Yoko picked up her drink from the table and took a swig of her. Yes. Faye watched Yoko's lips and went down her throat where Yoko was swallowing her drink. Angfa took Charlotte away and the two of them booked one of the rooms at the club. Faye knew what would happen tonight to the two of them. Charlotte entered. Angfa closed the door and locked it. Charlotte turned around. Angfa pulled Christy and immediately crushed Charlotte's lips wildly. Yoko noticed that Faye looked like she was starting to get drunk. She wasn't. Regardless, Faye kept glancing at Yoko, trying to dismiss her dirty thoughts. Where are you going? Yoko asked as Faye prepared to leave. I'm going to the toilet. Yoko shook her head and let Faye die on her own. Faye entered the ladies' room and entered a cubicle. Leia pulled down the zipper of her pants and looked at the little sister who had been awake since earlier. Thank God Yoko didn't notice that, otherwise she would have been very embarrassed. His hand started touching us and shaking us softly. Yoko waited for Angfa and Faye, who had not returned. Lai took the cell phone and opened it, trying to dissipate sleepiness. Waiting for Angfa and Faye, who have not yet appeared. Faye held back a sigh when she was about to reach you. The white liquid came out. Faye saw his hands that were exposed to the white liquid. Yes also took a tissue and gave her hands and hers. After everything was done, Faye came out to wash her hands and looked at herself in the mirror. The look on his face was red. The look on her face was red. She was really aroused, even though she only saw Yoko's thighs. She knew it wasn't that easy to touch you. Trying to adjust the look on her face, Faye left the toilet and walked towards the room where Yoko was. Set entered. Faye found Yoko, who was already asleep on the sofa. The tough test came again. Faye sighed and approached Yoko. Yes, carrying Yoko and not forgetting to carry Yoko's bag. Angfa and Charlotte had just finished a sports night with Angfa hugging Charlotte's body without clothes. Faye came out of the bar and headed for the car while carrying Yoko koala style. Slowly she opened the car door beside her and put Yoko very slowly. After that she put the sipple. Faye closed the car door and ran a little to the driver's seat. She got in and started the car engine. Faye died parking lot bar and died Angfa. Yoko really fell asleep due to the influence of drinks and sleepiness. That could not be resisted. Faye glanced at Yoko briefly and then refocused on driving the car. Sudanese clock shows 3 in the morning. Faye until Faye's men opened the car door, and after that Faye got off. Aya opened the car door again and carried Yoko out. The bodyguards who saw it walked on Faye's back. They slightly ran Faye up and headed for Yoko's room. Faye's men opened the door to Yoko's room. Faye entered, walked to the bed and laid Yoko on the bed. After removing the shoes that Yoko wore, Faye pulled the sailmet to cover Yoko's body and left Yoko's room. Faye made her way to his room. Aya opened the door and entered. Faye cleaned his body and went straight to bed and slept. Charlotte opened her eyes slowly and looked at Angfa, who was still sleeping beside her. She watched Angfa's face. Charlotte opened her salute and stared at both of them. Yes, just holding her forehead, remembering last night's events. Laya woke up positioning sitting leaning on the edge of the bed. Angfa opened her eyes and looked at Charlotte, who was also staring at Ya. Are you awake? Charlotte just nodded her head slowly. Angfa woke up still with her eyes looking at Charlotte. Yes, also leaning on the edge of the bed. Does it hurt? Charlotte was just silent, gently stroking Charlotte's cheek. I'll take you home. Charlotte shook her head. No need, last night I brought the car. Angfa just silently looked into Charlotte's eyes so deeply, and both of them were lost in gaze and ended up kissing each other. Both of them broke the kiss when they heard Charlotte's cell phone ringing. Charlotte got out of bed and picked up the bag that was on the floor. She opened it and picked up the cell phone. When she saw the name, Charlotte looked at Angfa. I have to go home and work. She nodded her head in understanding. Charlotte also put back on her clothes and came out of the room. Lux looked at Charlotte. Both of them were in his office. Lux gave money to Charlotte. This is for your work last night. You have successfully approached my Angfa. Warning, don't use squeeze. And make sure the Angfa doesn't find out about this cooperation. Charlotte saw the money in front of her, which was so much. She took the money and put it in her bag. She glanced at Lux, who was sitting in front of her. I will make sure this is not discovered. They will give drugs. Within 5 days I need a car. I'll get the car ready for you. You just take it easy. Charlotte also got up from sitting and died in Lux's room. Lux tilted her smile. This time she had succeeded in getting Charlotte to find out about Faye through the Angfa. It's a good idea to take a cell phone and call someone. Ready one car and install a tracking device. After saying that, Lux turned off the call. I'm not sure what to make of this, but I'm sure it's a good idea to take a look at some of the things you've done to make sure you're getting the most out of it. Angfa and Faye are currently on the sofa. Angfa is looking at Faye. Don't you feel suspicious about Charlotte's arrival? Faye questioned Angfa. Angfa shook her head slowly. I don't have a bad feeling about you. Anyway, you often buy stuff, so I feel safe for that. Faye looked at the Angfa so seriously. Her eyes looked at the Angfa's neck, which had a peck mark. I hope you don't cross the line. Tell him what he can and don't bring him together with Yoko again. I understand. Both of them turned around when they heard the rare footsteps approaching their direction. Yoko descended the stairs and walked towards the sofa. Angfa and Faye looked at each other. Hey, how did you sleep, Yanyak? Angfa asked Yoko. Yoko sat on the bed on the sofa near Angfa and nodded her head. Iya looked at Faye, who was looking at Ya without expression. Yoko looked at Angfa. I want to eat out. Bo Angfa accompany me? Angfa glanced at Faye and glanced back at Yoko, nodding her head. Yes. Okay, then let's go now. Faye got up and the three of them left the house. Yoko and Faye sat next to each other while Angfa chose to sit in the second seat. Several bodyguards followed them from behind. They were going to find lunch outside. Faye took Yoko in a fancy restaurant. Order the men to look around. Faye ordered Angfa as she parked the car at the restaurant. Angfa sent a message to the men, and the three got out. The three entered the restaurant and walked into the room. A waiter greeted the three and showed them to the room. The waiter left after taking their order. Yoko opened her cell phone and read the message from Ice. Hey, it's me, Ice. Yoko quickly replied to Ice's message. Faye looked at Yoko, who was so busy with her cell phone. Angfa got a message from Tom that Faye and Angfa should go to the warehouse immediately. Angfa glanced at Faye. Just with a glance at Faye's eyes already understood her. The three of them began to eat. Faye looked at Yoko, who was putting a side dish on Angfa's plate. Angfa smiled with satisfaction, but did not want to mock Faye now. Yoko took the meat on her plate and fed Faye. Angfa just shook her head slowly at that. Why did the bodyguards have to follow us away? Yoko asked the two of them. Karen Aya was so surprised that bodyguards always follow them even though they don't know if every day. The bodyguards always keep them at a distance. It's okay, we pay them to look after us and that's their job. Angfa answered Yoko's question. Yoko just nodded her head and didn't want to ask many questions in front of Faye. After the three finished lunch, Faye and Angfa returned to take Yoko home. Because the two were going to the warehouse, Yoko was again busy exchanging messages with Ice. Angfa looked at Yoko. After this we will leave. Yoko looked away and looked at Angfa. I'll bowl I know where. Faye parked the car and Yoko got out and so did Angfa. Yoko turned around and looked at Angfa. Take care. After saying that, Angfa got into the car. Yoko just stared at Faye's car and Angfa, who had moved away in front of her. Laya also ran inside up and to the room. The two of them arrived at the warehouse. Faye's men immediately greeted the two of them and were about to discuss something. Now that they had gathered in a room, Faye looked at Tom, who was about to start the conversation. We got a report that the person who bought the drugs was at the police station. Faye just silently waited for Tom to speak again. Then what should we do? Angfa asked Tom. Angfa and Faye would not feel worried even if it was the police themselves, because the two of them used fake identities again back home that night. They used masks and glasses. It was impossible for the buyer to hit the faces of the two of them for 1 ton. I don't think it can be circulated at this time because the police will conduct patrols starting tonight. Faye just nodded her head in understanding. Tom pressed the remote and displayed the news about the 10 tons of drugs captured by the police. Faye and Angfa watched the news until the end. Does he remember Plata, the car of one of us? Angfa asked Tom. Tom shook his head, not knowing. Immediately informed Charlotte that 1 ton must be delayed until the news disappears. Tom immediately did what he was told by Faye. Angfa looked at Faye. Why did she feel that something was wrong? Faye got up from sitting, yes, and came out of the warehouse. Yes, walked towards the house not far from the warehouse. Did the police start searching this area? Angfa asked Faye. Brand orders now to activate the trap in the surrounding area. Angfa immediately sent a message. Faye spoke up again. I want to go home now. The two of them headed back to the car. Before that, the two of them checked the car. In the safety of Faye and Engen died in the warehouse. We have to be careful now. What if the big drug boss is angry because the goods he bought were detained by the police? Faye lay silent, hearing Angfa's words. Not caught, it's a police car. Angfa spoke while looking at Faye, who was so seriously driving. Faye drove her car slowly as the police signaled to stop. Faye lowered the car glass. Excuse me, can we check the trunk? Angfa and Faye looked at each other. The two policemen got out and started checking the two cars while the other policeman recorded the names of Faye and Angfa and looked at their identity cards. The police did not find any suspicion or any items in Faye's car, and both of them were allowed to continue their journey. Wah, we're safe, Angfa shouted hysterically. Why do you have to be afraid? It's just the police. Soon they will be hit by the trap we set. Angfa immediately looked at Faye seriously. Aren't you my crocodile will be full tomorrow? Faye spoke with a grin on her lips. Angfa was just silent. The two of them began to enter the city. Faye and Angfa got off when the two arrived. It was late afternoon. Yoko, who was on the sofa, stood up and ran to the door when she heard the sound of a car. Yoko smiled so wide as she saw Faye and Angfa emerge from the front door.